Welcome to Share, a podcast production of Amethyst Recovery Centers. I'm your host, Kabir Singh. At the top of each episode, we like to remind our listeners that addiction is treatable and recovery is possible. If you or a loved one are struggling with addiction, call Amethyst today at 855-80-SOBER or visit us online at amethystrecoverycenters.com. Owning a business can be stressful, but imagine owning your own business during active addiction. Our guest today is Matt Scudder, Vice President of Precision Solutions, a professional printing company based in Owings Mills, Maryland. Matt has been clean since 2013, but running Precision Solutions since 2009. So he has been on both sides of this disease since owning his own business. Today we're going to hear about Matt's story and learn what it's like running a business, tending to stress, and maintaining a peace of mind during recovery. Matt is joining us in the studio today, so thanks for being here, Matt.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's cool to see you. I don't get a chance during this pandemic to actually see people in person. Doing a number of these things on Zoom and the like. It's refreshing to see a familiar face. So again, welcome. So the printing business, interesting. So how did you get into that?
So at the height of my addiction, I was actually working at a print shop right in Owings Mills at FedEx, and met a client one day. Really short story. A guy came in. He wanted some flyers. A mutual friend with my brother, and we offered him to do this printing at a much cheaper rate. And one thing led to another. Before we knew it, he was volume mailing over 500,000 pieces a week. And before we knew it, we were bringing equipment into an office. And literally, that was about our only client for about 5.5 years. It was at the height of when gold was huge and everybody was buying gold, cash for gold. And it just became a huge direct mail printing company from there. And we parlayed that into doing everything. So
that was the nature of that particular business. It was during the cash for gold time.
Yeah. And literally it was one client, and we were just mailing all their flyers every week. And when that dried up, we kind of had to pivot a little bit, and we started offering all kinds of printing services. And we had the capital, we had the funds, we had the office space, and my brother and I just teamed up, and we started pushing and promoting different kinds of products. And it's been a crazy journey. So
that the story that you just told me, tell me again, what year is this?
So this was back in 2009. 2009,
mm-hmm. Okay. And then, so you've been clean since 2013. So
right.
let's talk a little bit about 2000. Listeners always like to hear that before we get to the recovery part.
So in 2009, I was on Suboxone at the time for about 2.5 years, I would say. It was socially acceptable in my family to take this drug. I was going to a doctor every month, getting prescribed, 4 15 milligram Suboxones. I was getting prescribed the Adderall for the fake ADD disorder. I was getting, all different kinds of medications from the doctor.
Doctor shopping. For the listeners may not know this particular thing. Yeah,
built a relationship with the doctor. At the time, my brother was also on the Suboxone because we were using together before we got put on the Suboxone. My dad got put on the Suboxone as well a year later because he had to get surgery. So it was very acceptable to take this drug. It became normal. It became kind of like this is okay to take this drug. And my life was somewhat manageable, but it got worse from there. The car accidents kept happening, the nodding out behind the wheel.
Were you using a lot of times in our stories, there's also street drugs being used mixed in?
It got to a point where the doctor stopped giving me the specific medications. So here I am now, going and buying them off the street, the Xanax, and my life just became really unmanageable, and I didn't know how to stop. But at the same time, the business kept going, and I didn't want I didn't want my brother to suffer from my downfall. So there was a brief time where I stepped away from the business to figure out my stuff. And that was about almost a year plus to figure out my stuff. And fortunately, my pain wasn't great enough until I got arrested in 2012. Facing 2 years in jail, having large possessions of medications on me. And I'm grateful for the preceding events, going to the judge saying, listen, like, you know, I should be throwing you in jail right now. But I told her, like, whatever you want me to do, like, I'll do it, you know. And that's kind of where NA kind of came into my story a little bit. I was going to meetings around that time to appease the probation officer, to appease my parents, but I wasn't ready. So
at that particular juncture, you're in front of a judge. Did they order you to go to treatment, or you're going to meetings on your own? What like?
So at this point, this was like May 2012. I went to treatment in September of 2012. Court ordered. I wasn't court ordered. I went to treatment and to get off all these medications. And
detox, probably. Yeah.
At
first,
you know, it's crazy because it's been over 8 years, so the memory it's very foggy. You know, the timeline. You know, I used to have a binder of just like all the times I got pulled over for driving on the wrong side of the road or like just nodding out behind the wheel. At this point in my life, I got in so many car accidents, my insurance company wouldn't even take me, so I didn't have a car. My license was suspended, 6 month suspension. You know, so like literally I am 26, 27 years old, and like I have, like, what am I doing with my life, you know?
Yeah.
And that's where, at the time, I was like, I had to go to NA. I had to go to NA meetings. You know, I was on the court. The judge gave me 18 months probation, and
you lucked out. You lucked out on that one. Yeah.
I mean, I had enough medication on me where they could have threw the book at me. You know, they thought I was dealing drugs, getting, you know, it could have been a lot worse.
It's funny how we end up in court a lot, and to think we're dressed out. This is all for me. No, this is not being sold. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we can sit here and sort of laugh about it today because we're out of that. But
right.
Yeah.
You know, and so yeah, I started going to meetings. I started going to meetings in like 2011, 2012, and I saw people going to the rooms of NA, and I saw the desire, I saw the willingness, I saw the freedom of people laughing and smiling, and like here I am with the predetermined perception that being on Suboxone is considered clean, being on maintenance is clean, you know, coming to the rooms, being on Suboxone since 2007, here it is 2012, you know, I'm good, you know, I'm not on heroin anymore.
Right, not putting a needle in my arm.
Right, yeah, I'm good, you know. But you know, and it took me a while to realize, to actually live a life, I had to get off everything. You know, so I went to the rooms and started meeting people and making friends and, like, you know, getting rides to meetings, and here I am, like, building connections, but I'm still going to meetings and I'm still using. And it took me about 18 months to get honest with myself, really, you know, and with my sponsor at the time, while figuring out the stuff with my brother and the business and like what I want to do with my life, you know. In September of 2012, I went to treatment. It was basically a detox, but I was planning on staying there for 28 days. You know, I just wanted to get off everything. And I couldn't. I was there for about 9 days. Because after the 5th day detox, I was like, I can't do this.
Right.
You know, I got off everything but the Suboxone, and I basically went AMA. You know, they gave me just enough to hold me over to get out. My mom picked me up, and I started telling lies to my friends in recovery that I'm clean, and that lasted for another year. You know, but I still kept doing what I was doing, you know.
It's interesting on that one particular point because so listeners who have listened to other podcasts know that I'm a certified peer in the state of Maryland. There's a whole other way of thinking. There's many pathways to recovery there. There's the medication assisted treatment route, the one that you're talking about. And I know identifying with 12-step fellowship and all that abstinence-based, where and when possible, is really the way that the sort of highest path to freedom, which I know you recognize now, and sort of the dishonesty and deceit that takes place there with ourselves, right? That I'm clean because I'm not using intravenous drugs anymore. But there is a thought out there that's the true healing that takes place in the mind. It takes place without anything.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean that's the thing. Like I just didn't understand. Like, you know, I just want to be happy. And at that point in my life, like, here I am, like, just doing the same thing over and over again. You know, my parents wanted to write me off. Like, they wouldn't, but, like, they wanted to kick me out of the house multiple times. My brother was sick of my shit. I mean, you know, he had his own problems, but, like...
Is this brother older or younger?
He's older.
He's older, okay.
He's about 2.5 years older than me. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, like, I come from a family of addiction. You know, my mother's a big enabler, and, like, she'll do anything for her kids no matter what. And, you know, so it's like breaking that cycle. And, you know, my sponsor at the time told me, he's like, you know, eventually, you know, all you gotta do is change one thing. And I'm like, what's that? He's like, everything. You know, and it's just like, that concept just seems so hard because I was a product of my environment. And it wasn't until I got the courage to get out of that environment was I ready to change, you know. You know, I mean, did I travel much growing up? Yeah, sure, we went all over the place, but, like, me personally at that age, I mean, the last 10 years, I mean, 15, I mean, I was 26, 27. I got clean when I was 28, but I mean, like, for the past 10 plus years, I didn't really go anywhere.
Yeah.
So, like, for me to, like, for the events that happened when I got clean, like, you know, to actually, you know, go to I went to this World Convention in NA in 2012 with my sponsor while I was still using.
Where was that one? That was in
Philly.
That one, yep. I went to that one too. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was my first NA World Convention. It was close, and it was incredible. You know, it was like, but here I am, like, you know, sick out of my mind using, but, like, all these people, it's just it was overwhelming, and it was like something I wanted, you know, but I wasn't ready.
That was a huge convention.
It was great,
by the way. It was like the 25,000 people.
It was
incredible experience.
It was like something, and that's the thing. Like, it's just like at that time, like it was just amazing. Like, okay, this is possible. It gave me, like, almost like the hope that maybe I can do this. You know, I can break the cycle. You know, and it took me a few more months, and it all comes down to getting honest with yourself and other people, and, like, really just standing up for yourself. And long story short, like, I had a friend, she got clean in Florida. She's like, you know, she was a lot worse than I was, and she said, why don't you come down here? You know, and she gave me a few recommendations, and you know, because I had nothing going on for me in Maryland at the time. You know, I was on the outs with my brother. My parents and I weren't getting along great, you know, so I made a phone call, you know, and I made a phone call on November 10th, 2013, and it was almost like a 5-day kind of, all right, I'm going to call this place, let's see what they say. Oh, you're approved. Pack your bags for 5 days, come on down, we'll pick you up from the airport, no problem. And it got real, but I wasn't ready yet. You know, I had to take care of a few things.
Yeah.
You know, I eventually went, but, you know, I think I had, like, 18 days left of my probation sentence in Maryland. So, you know, and my parents were like, Florida, you're not going to Florida. You're out of your mind, you know.
You haven't left a 5-mile radius.
Right. And my dad didn't believe it, you know, and it was just such a huge shift, such a huge change, and I ended up going. My sponsor picked me up from my house. I remember I had to go to my probation officer to get a letter to leave the state of Maryland. And I remember, you know, going to BWI and him dropping me off. And, And like, here I am. I'm off everything except this drug I've been on for almost 7 years that I can't get off of. And I'm leaving the environment, the product of my environment, to start something new. And it was scary. It was uncomfortable. I was feared up. And
I've heard it's one of the more insidious substances to get off of, Suboxone. I heard it's really, really tough. So one thing I didn't have experience with was that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing I think for me is like, you know, you get caught up with, you know, a maintenance program, and they don't give you they don't say like, oh, hey, you know, we're going to take this for like, you know, 6 months. We're going to wean you off of this. Right. I never really got that from my doctor. It was almost like, and of course, then I'm on this, I'm comfortable. Why am I going to change it? So it's like, we're going to lower your levels. We're going to increase, like, I still don't feel good. So it was like, it just kept, it's just ongoing and ongoing. And like, so, so I went to the airport, and I got on a flight, and I went to Florida, and that was November 15th, 2013, and I've been clean ever since.
Nice.
But like, I think the biggest hit for me is like when I got there, I got to the detox, you know, it was not what I expected, but it's exactly what I needed. And, you know, they take your blood levels, they check your heart rate, all that stuff. They ask you a bunch of questions, and, you know, they put me in a room, and I was scared. I was terrified. And like, they put me on like a Q10 watch. They had to come check on me every 10 minutes because I didn't want to take any kind of meds or anything. I was there to get off this, and that's what I was there to do. But that's when I discovered, you know, God, you know, and just really like, I got on my knees and I prayed, like, please help me.
Yeah. And
I remember that to this day, that feeling.
That's the important part to remember. I know earlier on you were talking about it's kind of foggy, and I suppose, and it's been my own experiences. I remember that those last couple days and those life-changing moments. Yeah. And I hang on to those. Yeah.
Because I never want to feel like that ever again.
I hear you on that.
Because the next 2, 3, 4 months wasn't a highlight of my life. You know, it was miserable.
Yeah.
But in that process, I stayed in long-term treatment for about 6 months down there, and I learned to find me again. You know, learned how to have basic human conversations and how to laugh, how to have fun.
Do you remember that? You remember maybe the first time that when you were down there in those first few months, learning how to live, especially without the maintenance at this point, when the light came back on for you? Was it month 3, 4?
So I want to say after 3 weeks, I started eating again. So that was good. I'd say I stopped wearing a jacket in South Florida. I'd say closer to January. So I would say about 2.5 months.
For the listeners who may not understand what that means, Matt wearing a jacket in South Florida, you just feel god awful cold when you come off of these maintenance drugs or opiates. You could be in 80 degrees and you feel cold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, the light came back on, and you know, I was ready to find me again. But I wasn't ready for that responsibility of leaving. I wasn't ready for. I still wanted to stay down there, and I did. I stayed down there, and I got humbled. Took the bus to a job every day, and went to a halfway house after 3 months in IOP. And fortunately, I was in a pretty good program where it was all connected. It was the same thing for God bless that program. They're not there anymore, but I mean, it was great. Like, it was. For me, it's what I needed.
What we needed at the moment we needed it.
Yeah. And and like, I mean, it's just like, where am I today? Like, how did I get from there to here? Like, I mean, I made some decisions that were best for me, and like I said before I left to go to Florida, I was doing the whole NA thing for about 18 months. So I had a sponsor back here, I had a home group, I had all that stuff. So like, in like April 2014, I got a different job offer, to kind of like a transitional thing, to come back to Maryland and start a business, and thought it was a good move. I needed some separation from my brother at the time, and from family, and I did that. And and like my sponsor picked me up from the airport that night. He took me home. I had 6 months clean at that time. And
so your sponsor was still up here. while you were down in Florida.
Yeah.
Because you maintained that relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I had to do that. I mean, I had to get a sponsor down there, but, you know, it was, I don't think the plan was to ever stay down there long term. I think the plan was to, whatever that was the plan. The plan was to find out who I was, you know. Still trying to figure out who I am today, you know.
So it's interesting you bring that, sort of leading me into my next part of what I wanted to discuss is, you know, you're running a business now. You're running it clean. A lot of us, they say, are well suited to be sole proprietor, entrepreneurs and the like. I honestly believe that for a lot of us in recovery, we're not all the best to be sitting in cubicles and stuff like that. So what's that been like for you for running a business clean? Can't medicate the feelings, right?
Right. Well, I will say this. When I first came back and we started doing this thing together about, you know, back in, so this was back in 2015, we started, you know, I was kind of scared at first because, like, it was like the prioritizing things, like the getting things done, learning the things that I kind of forgot to do, but then it was scary, you know. Anything scary new, you know, you got to learn something. But I kind of was just thrown into it. And now it's like I thrive on it. Now it's just like, it just fills me up. It's just like every day it's something different, you know. It almost like I revel in the chaos a little bit.
So it's much more than when certainly myself, maybe some listeners out there think of a printing company that do, you know, trifolds and
right.
You get a whole range of
thing.
products.
Like, you know, like today, this morning, I had to come in. One of my print brokers, he needed he does car wraps, so we do the car wrap printing for him, and then, you know, and then he needed a banner yesterday. I mean, did some sashes for LLS down the street, you know, for their Student of the Year seminar thing they have going on this year. Like, you know, so I spent 4 hours, T-shirts, you know, doing sashes, like, so it's every day it's something different. Doing some mail for some clients,
direct mailing,
direct mailing, yeah. You know, so again, it's something different for everybody. That's the thing, but it's all inclusive. Signs, you know, flyers, you know, all that kind of stuff.
The balance with the stress. I know myself being a person in recovery, you are, of course. Running your own business, whatever that looks like, we can't go to happy hour, right? And your father, we were catching up right before we went live here, and your young daughter that you have, and that work-life balance. Yeah, I mean, what do you do to?
So for me, the balance is key. I've learned to, when I leave the office 5:30, I turn it off. Do my best to turn it off. Spend time with her, fill it up with her. I would love to say that I've been working out the past. It's kind of stopped a little bit, but that's what I was doing. I mean, that's the thing. I'm an addict, and if it's not food, it's other things. You know, filling the void every way possible. You know, and when that's not good enough, when the pain gets great enough, I share about it, and then move on to something else. You know.
What would you say right now for the newcomer that's getting clean, getting sober during a pandemic, coming out of treatment, right? Because we have Zoom, we have networks, we have, you know, a lot of that stuff's established for guys like me and you. Interesting time to get clean, to get sober.
Yeah.
What would your suggestion be?
I mean, if you're on Zoom and you're in a meeting, for me, the biggest thing for me, when I went to one of my first NA meetings in Maryland, in this area, I raised my hand and I said, listen, I'm in trouble. I need help. And, you know, people will talk to you after the meeting. And I kept doing that over and over again, you know, every single meeting I go to. I think the consistency of asking for help and reaching out, because we're not mind readers, is what I would suggest to the listener. You know, and then you get the phone numbers, like, utilize it, like, call them, you know, build that relationship, build that connection. Because that's what recovery has done for me. It's all about building connections, building relationships, you know, and then if I continue to further that connection, like, something grows from it, you know. That's what I suggest. Yeah.
What's been the biggest impact of this pandemic period to your recovery?
Oof. I mean, the biggest impact, to my recovery. I mean, I used to go to a meeting a couple times a week, maybe more. And I mean, it got so comfortable with Zoom. Like, why do we have to even go to a meeting anymore? It's all in Zoom now. You have the hybrid option now. You can just Zoom it in. And then you start putting your priorities ahead of NA meetings. Oh, I don't have to go to a meeting. It's on Zoom. I can watch my daughter. It's all good, but you're not really listening to the meeting. And that's one thing that's kind of affected my recovery a little bit now.
That's certainly, I can relate to that. I didn't, heck, when you work in treatment like this, or I have the luxury of stopping into these centers to really be face to face with the newcomer. I really convinced myself I don't need an in-person meeting. Like, Zoom's perfect. I saw enough sickness today that I'm way sure that I'm not going to drink or use a drug, and then that sort of halfway tuned in, I'm like get the TV on past the device that I'm looking on and things like that. So I can certainly relate to that.
Yeah.
And then the pandemic in your business, what's that looking like? Has it?
Well, when pandemic started, we had to kind of pivot again. We had to pivot again, and we were doing signs, large volumes of signs for everybody had a sign in their front yard that said, like, congratulations, Emily, class of 2020. So we were doing the large volume signage. I had to let a few guys go at the time. I was working half days, and kind of bored a little bit, but I mean, I wasn't scared, wasn't worried. We like I said, we had to pivot and shift a little bit, and like luckily around like July it started picking back up again, because like my business is primarily event coordinated, so any kind of event, a mailer, a book, whatever it was, people weren't doing it. Lost a lot of business via churches and stuff like that, because no one needs donation envelopes, they're all on Zoom. But over time, I've seen it come back. A year later, like I said, we're making it work.
Yeah.
Thank God. Thankfully.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Share your website for any listener that wants to find your services.
Sure. Yeah. You can go to www.precisionsolutions.net.
All right. Well, there you have it, folks. A lot of pivoting. A lot of adjustments. That's what recovery is about. It's not a linear process. If you've listened to any of these podcasts, you'll realize that a lot of these stories that we hear, there's a commonality between them, and none of them are in a straight line. So we hope that Matt was able to shed some light on the fact that running your own business is much easier in recovery than it is in active addiction, and that despite workplace stressors, their life in sobriety is always achievable. If you or a loved one needs help with addiction, call Amethyst today at 855-80-SOBER, or visit us online at amethystrecoverycenters.com. To find more episodes of Share, visit amethystrecoverycenters.com/share, or subscribe wherever you get podcasts. Thanks for tuning in to another episode. I'm Kabir Singh, and we'll see you next time.